Hi, my name is Piper Green and I chose option B, the marketing strategy for the brand Keurig. I also am focusing on the market segment of Cuban American college students and Cuban American parents of college students. I wanted to do something that would be slightly more challenging to market to Hispanics, and I chose Keurig because Hispanics are very particular about their coffee, but Keurigs happen to be known as a watered down version of a good cup of coffee. I personally own a Keurig and I realized the untapped potential that lies in the Hispanic market. A big part of the Hispanic culture is the polychronic aspect, meaning the culture does many things at once and distractions may be a way of life. This explains why time management or punctuality is not a top priority. But Keurig can provide a way to save time and money while still enjoying a necessity, coffee. It can also be a very beneficial thing for college students to have, which I will get into later. But for the first section I will discuss is understanding the consumer. For some background, in 1959, Fidel Castro rose to power and overthrew a US-backed government establishment and replaced it with a socialist one. Because of this, the US put sanctions in place which further isolated the island. There was little food and water for decades throughout the Castro rule, and rations were just a way of life. During the Cold War, Castro and Cuba was closely allied with the Soviet Union, which further increased tensions between Cuba and the United States. Fast forward to 2021, and tensions have relieved a bit with the past Obama administration, but Trump reversed a lot of his peacekeeping efforts, and tensions are still up and down. In 2021, there were many protests in Cuba about the poor socioeconomic conditions. The protesters were punished for speaking against the government, and today it is still a harsh place to live. All of this comes into play when considering the Cuban American consumer. Although Cuban American college students in this day and age may not have been personally affected by Cuba's government processes, their parents or grandparents can likely recount stories of life on the island. Growing up with little food, dangerous living conditions, and strict government control, Keurig may seem like a luxury among all of that. Some of the members of the older generations may not know what a Keurig even is. When marketing Keurig for the Cuban American college student, you have to consider who may be buying it for them, grandparents and parents, and one must consider their feelings when marketing it. That's why emotional advertisements that demonstrate the importance of family can potentially convince parents to buy this coffee maker, but I will elaborate on that later. My second section is objectives, and my main objective being increased brand awareness about Keurig. As mentioned previously, some older generations may not know what it is, so it's important to make it more known to the public and more known to Hispanic populations. When focusing on Cuban American college students, a challenge and direct competitor arises, which is known as the Cuban coffee stovetop espresso maker. This invention helps users make espresso, but not in a timely manner. After prep time, which could include grinding the coffee beans, boiling time, and cleanup time, the whole process may take 10 to 15 minutes. Whereas Keurig is just a matter of adding water and a K-pod. It doesn't even require prep time or to be cleaned afterwards. As we know, convenience sells, and Keurig is the more convenient option in this case. Less time needed to make a cup of coffee is more time that a student has to get ready for class. Additionally, brands like Café Bustelo make a Cuban coffee K-cup that is pretty popular and can provide students with a taste of home if that's what they grew up drinking. If parents learn about Keurigs in general and them being an option for saving time and money for their kids, they'll be more likely to buy one because they don't want their students running late to class. Moving on to the next section would be strategies and the mix of marketing communication elements. Placing Keurigs in Targets and Walmarts within a 10-mile radius of college campuses could certainly drive up sales. Especially if they are on display with dorm essentials, they could even offer promotions or sales during the week before or after classes start. This is when parents will be looking for those deals and shopping for their students. Advertisements that will help consumers save money should definitely be marketed on platforms and social medias that Hispanics are often on, whether it be TV channels, radio stations, or social media platforms like Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. Advertising on social media should be done with college students and parents in mind. Brand exposure is really important to ensure ads reach the target market and drive up sales. On to the next section, a few branding elements could be specific advertisements. So I came up with 2 ideas. The first one being a more emotional appeal that targets the parents. This ad would depict a Cuban American student, potentially first gen, going to college and parents getting it as a gift, and it being called the gift that keeps on giving, or el regalo que perdura, which means a gift that endures or lasts, which could mean lasts throughout their college career. Keurig doesn't exactly have emotional connotations, but a rebranding could serve to target the Hispanic population. The other idea would be an ad that depicts 2 roommates getting ready at the same time. However, one uses a Keurig and one uses the stovetop espresso maker. They essentially have the same morning routine for class. They essentially have the same morning routine, except the one that makes the Keurig is on time and the one that uses the espresso maker is late. Especially if you consider living in a dorm hall where the kitchen is all the way down the hall and the student would have to run down there, fire up their espresso maker, wait, and then go back and drink their coffee. Keurigs can save a lot of time for college students. This would be logical and would target college students and could also target parents as well. My last section would be the analysis. So surveying Cuban American college students to see specifics on coffee consumption habits and their willingness to buy or use a Keurig would be beneficial in determining interest. In addition, I would want to survey about traditions that may hinder them from buying or desiring a Keurig, just like preferring a stovetop espresso over trying a Keurig. My goal is to raise brand awareness among the Cuban American college student and parent population. This could be specifically in Florida or in the United States, but success could be measured through seeing an increase in sales among Cuban Americans during the back to school season for Keurig, or just having more brand exposure to Keurig in general, which could also be gauged by surveying Cuban Americans and seeing if they've heard of Keurig or if they would consider using Keurig. I think my advertisements mentioned earlier would be very beneficial to driving up interest in sales, as well as targeting a pretty much untapped target market. So this concludes my presentation for my final project. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope that it all made sense.